Here from Housatonic Resource Recovery Authority. Jen's already got composting operations going. She's expanding. She's successful. She's particularly effective at community building. She's going to kick it off. And then we've got Betsy LaForce. Betsy works for Green Mountain Technologies. So there's, again, bringing new technology and understanding of that for how we can improve our composting operations for those of us who are trying to do a scaled operation. So welcome, Jen. She's going first.
Good afternoon. We kind of lost our crowd. Feeling kind of assaulted here. So, all right. Good afternoon. I'm Jen Heaton-Jones. I'm the Executive Director of the Housatonic Resources Recovery Authority. So we represent 14 municipalities in Western Connecticut. We are the Regional Governmental Solid Waste Authority. So I'm going to start off with what inspired me. You've seen earlier, folks have said 22% of the waste stream is food waste, but 32% of our waste stream is organic. So there's about another 11% that's other yard debris and other material that folks are throwing in that we wish they weren't, but they are. So that's actually a much bigger piece of the pie in the waste stream that we need to address. And what inspired me was back in 2012, so the end of 2012, I was at a solid waste advisory committee meeting at Connecticut Deep in Hartford. I had joined the HRRA in 2009, so I'd finally sort of got my feet wet and figured out this thing about waste and realized, you know, this is the low-lying fruit. And this is the piece that we could really address when we're talking about getting to 60% waste diversion by 2024. And here we are in 2024. We did not meet that goal completely, but that's another conversation when you're looking at data and what have we really diverted. So we're celebrating 10 years now. So we started the first municipal curbside organics program in 2014 in Bridgewater, Connecticut. It was a small pilot program. It was curbside collection. We partnered with a private hauler to help us collect this material. We had a very successful 99% put out rate every Friday. It only had less than 1% contamination. It was a wonderful program, and it went for 18 months. And it would have continued to go for one factor: money. Residents were not willing to pay for the curbside collection. The pilot program had sponsored and supported the collection, and when that grant and that funding went away, the residents just said, you know, we love it, but we're not willing to pay the $5 a week. I didn't want it to die. So that's when I created the first drop-off program. And we now, since that time, have 9 municipal transfer station drop-off programs for food scraps. My goal is to get to all 14 municipalities, but I think we've done a pretty good job in at least starting the drop-off program. We've stepped it up a notch. We did receive a Connecticut Deep Sustainable Material Management Grant last year, and we added the towns of Kent and Bethel for the food scraps. Newtown had already been collecting food scraps since 2015, but we added the unit-based pricing as a coupler to the organics diversion to ask residents to take our motto, take the challenge and reduce your solid waste. I wanted to throw in a few slides about our team. You know, you really can't do any of these projects without community involvement and community engagement, and we have great partners in our community. This is the Take the Challenge kit. It's a 6-gallon carry container. Dan Martins had showed you several different kitchen counter bins. We use a vented bin that we give away, but we essentially tell folks they can bring anything, any container they want, but we do give the tools if they need it, and then the orange bag for just their solid waste. I'm going to just highlight Newtown in this particular slide. They are probably the largest participating municipality that we do have, over 1,200 participants that bring their food scraps to the recycling center and dump their contents into a designated container. And highlighting Newtown, just in 21 weeks of this pilot program, we diverted 184 tons of municipal solid waste, with asking the residents to take the challenge, not just regarding taking out their food scraps, but really thinking about what it is that they are producing for solid waste. So diving deeper into the organics program, what can residents put in their bin? Essentially, we'll take everything from fruits and vegetables to meat and dairy, including shellfish and other in all of our programs. The programs are available to residents and non-residents, and most of our drop-offs are free to our participants. Permits are required, typically in most of our transfer stations, and as I had mentioned before, they can use their own bucket. We also try to provide a lot of public education and outreach, and we provide some tips like, please don't tie your bag, just twist it and tuck it so that the bags break down at the same rate as the vegetation, to empty their bag or their container every 2 to 3 days to prevent flies and odor. And they can lock that carry container that we give them so they don't have issues with vectors outside of their house. So taking it another step. I always knew for several years that although we were enthusiastic about our programs and we were really pushing the remove your food scraps from the waste stream, that really wasn't that sustainable when you think about it. We're having our residents drive to the transfer station, drop off their food scraps, and then we're hauling this material to several towns away. And our situation, so the brown circles are commercial processors, the lower one is Danbury's New England Compost, the far left one is New Milford Farms, and then Quantum Biopower is in the white section in Southington. And here we are, we have these drop-off programs, we're driving long distances and realizing, it really wasn't that sustainable. So I had wanted for several years to create on-site municipal composting to reduce our carbon footprint and also reduce the cost for our municipalities. Luckily, in the fall of 2021, we received a USDA grant and a Recycle CT Lee Sawyer grant that allowed us to build a sustainable system, a solar-powered ASP system. This is in Ridgefield, Connecticut. The goal of this project was to create a self-sustainable closed-loop composting system for transforming residential food waste into an end product for the community and agricultural use. This innovative project, it really does demonstrate the municipalities can manage food waste locally, reduce the carbon footprint of off-site disposal, and contribute to the waste diversion goals of the state. This project uses an ASP system, an aerated static pile, and the mixture of carbon, which is leaves in this case, and nitrogen, our food scraps, are placed on the solar-powered ASP piping system. The solar panels power a timed blower, which forces air into the perforated piping to circulate air through the composting pile, and the system maintains proper moisture and oxygen levels needed to produce that high-quality compost that we need and want. This project does increase access to compost to our residents, to our community garden groups. Local farmers have taken advantage, and our municipalities are using it for stormwater management and soil erosion. So taking it another step further, we used a lot of sustainable supplies. The footings of the solar panel are made from Positive from Urban Mining, which is made from recycled glass, and their product reduces the carbon footprint of cement by 50%. We partnered with our local expert, Jeff Demers from New England Compost, and he has been a guide throughout this entire process. We also partnered with local businesses. So this shed, the housing for our components, was donated by a local supply company, Ridgefield Supply, and the fence was actually repurposed. It was donated from a fencing company, and they were removing it from another job, from another house, and they repurposed it and gave it to us, so even better than giving us a new one. The Public Works Department worked with us to create the system, and this is them setting the pipes down. This is just another angle of the pipes being set, and this is the completed system with the solar panels. The fencing was for safety, the shed, and then how the pipes run off the shed and then into the ASP system. In August of 2022, we set the first pile of material. And so this is where I'm just going to get into what and how does an ASP system work. So with an ASP pile, we're constructing a compost pile over a network of aerated pipes, and we're introducing airflow into the pile using an electric blower that is operated by a timer. I'm just going to go back through the other, show you a little close-up of that blower. And so the blower is operated by a timer. The timer may be set for like 5 minutes every 20 minutes or 2 minutes every half hour, depending on the number of factors. The idea is that we're cycling air into the pile 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We do not turn the pile during the first 21 to 30 days. This period we refer to as an active phase of composting, and we can adjust the airflow to manage the pile's temperature and optimize the biology of the compost process. And finally, we operate the blower using solar power in this situation. So timing is everything, the importance of aeration. So by introducing that airflow using this timer, we're able to maintain the aerobic conditions without turning the pile, and this actually saves us a tremendous amount of effort. Different than a windrow system. I was just talking to them about a traditional windrow system where we're using large tractors and diesel and labor. We don't have that in an ASP system. It's a much lower carbon footprint. It does reduce the offensive odors and maybe our neighbors' complaints, so it's kind of a nice part of having an ASP system. It does greatly expedite the rate of composting, and it does produce a high-quality compost in less time and typically in higher volume. So after 30 days, we do pull those pipes out. We move the pile off the pipes. What we do then, it's actually mixing and creating more of a homogeneous pile, and we put it back on a separate set of pipes, and it sits there for 2 more weeks on the blower, and we take it off, and then it sits for 30 to 60 days to cure. So I wanted to give some diagram. I can't take complete credit of all of this. This actually comes from O2 Compost, and I redesigned their isometric views for our purposes. But this gives you a look at the geometry of an ASP pile. In this example, we have a pile width which can vary greatly, actually, but we work for like 6 to 12 feet wide. The spacing is about 5 feet for the pipes, and then we try to limit the pile to be about 75 to 80 feet, which is the rule of thumb here, and it depends really on the power of your blower and how much material you have on your pile. Depends on how large you want it. This is a different view looking down on the same pile. We see the inner rectangle, which represents the top of the pile, and the outer rectangle is the base of the pile, or where the toe where it comes in contact with the ground. In between is our outer slide slopes, and the red line there represents the cross section, which shows you the other photo or the image on the left with the biofilter cover unscreened. So there are several components and parts that integrate all of this, including the pipes that are important. We use SDR4 pipes, which are a much heavier duty pipe. They're not PVC, where that's a polyvinyl pipe, but the SDRs have a much thicker wall, so they can withstand, one, the weight, and 2, the pressure and the heat that occurs during the process of composting. This is just another view showing you sort of the 3 parameters of what we're looking for. The first is the nutrient balance, which is thought of as the carbon and nitrogen ratio. The second is the bulk density of the mix, which helps with the porosity and the ability to push the air up through the pile. And the third parameter is the moisture content, which is probably the most critical of the 3. We want moisture content to be about 60 to 65% in the initial mix, because we're going to be losing a lot of the moisture as we push air into the pile, and we want to make sure we have sufficient moisture. You'll find in these piles that in the fall and the winter time, it's much easier to maintain the moisture. It's really typically in the warmer months in the summer where you lose more moisture, and you may need to have access to water. A little bit about the biofilter. We just want to take a little closer look. It is an insulator. When we have a biofilter, it's unscreened compost because you don't want to take the effort and energy to screen the compost and then put it on this pile. So you can use unscreened compost that creates this protector. It retains the nutrients. It is a barrier for vector. It's a barrier for odor, and it's a barrier for retain that moisture. So some benefits, it does, as I mentioned before, reduce the footprint of the amount of space that you need to compost versus a windrowed system, and it does resolve the odor issues, and it does reduce the cost of actually processing the material. So in the end here we have our screener and our skid steer that moves our material. This was all paid for with our USDA grant. Here, this is residents collecting, or we're collecting the material, they're dropping off the material. And I have another photo here to the left. You can see the QR codes on top of the bins. We're collecting data at the same time. So the residents scan that QR code and they let us know, I just dropped off a full bucket, or I just dropped off a half a bucket, or I dropped off 2 buckets. And it just kind of gives us a sense of how often are residents utilizing this program and how much material are they bringing us. It's a little thing, if you were here for Nick's talk, we are working with local haulers. We are trying to experiment with how can we also utilize folks like Nick from Curbside Compost to bring us residential curbside. This project is for residential material, not for commercial material, although we are working with a few small businesses in town, like the local theater. We're taking their popcorn, and it's great. They were taking their popcorn and they're using our compost in their gardens outside of their facility. This is a compost cover, and why it's important. After we have a finished compost, it does protect the finished compost from excess rainfall, from preventing excess moisture. It helps us ensure that it doesn't go anaerobic because we don't want too much moisture, and after it's finished compost, it will be too wet and heavy. So here's our finished compost. The far left is the pile that's actually curing, and the one on the one on the right is curing, and the one on the left, where we see our Public Works Director, that is the finished compost that we give away. So Ridgefield in 2023 produced over 70 cubic yards of finished compost. We are really pleased that we are able to give this compost away to our residents and to community groups. And I love this slogan, grow a better future compost. And that was from our 4th grader from Weston Middle School who just entered a poster contest. We do test our compost, our finished compost, to see what our pH balance is. This was our last test. It's fairly good. We actually just sent off another test to see what metals and other components of our compost might be carrying, so that we can better articulate what are we providing to the community and how healthy is this compost, because often there are concerns about residents bringing their organic food waste and or other organic matter, and what are they bringing us. I'm getting to the end, just talking about this whole project is about bringing the community together. Our awesome Public Works Director, Dave Pacetti, is retiring. I could almost cry. He's been amazing. If you want a great program, you need a great Public Works Director. You need Public Works operators, transfer station operators who are willing to work with you and have an open mind and an open heart to see the good in what we're doing. With Dave is Tiffany Carlson, my amazing and awesome project manager for our SMM programs, who's been just an instrumental local leader and my champion. And these 3 guys here are from RACE, the Ridgefield Action Committee for the Environment, volunteers who literally helped us physically build that solar power system. The guy in the middle, Dwayne, is an expert in solar. We couldn't have done it without him. And down in the left is our local partners, from the fencing company to the, the Ridgefield Supply. Dwayne and Nick is there as well. I had written down a couple notes, but I left them over there. Actually, Betsy, if you wouldn't mind bringing them over, because you're up next anyway. I wrote down a couple of notes, thank you. some questions that were asked at the end in regards to how do we get more community involvement and other large generators to know what's happening. Trust me, the associations know. They are telling their members, and I'm sure those large generators are well informed. The last thing is just about the future. What does the future look like? And I think this will segue well into Betsy's presentation. I have 14 municipalities. I have 9 drop-off programs. That's not enough. I need 14. I want it, just like Nick said, in every one of my municipalities. I want easy, accessible access, convenient access to all of my residents. I want them to be able to use backyard composting as their first tool. We do teach backyard composting. If they're not willing to do that, then hire Nick or bring it to the transfer station and drop it off for free. So that's my ultimate goal. And in order for that to be sustainable, we need more of these ASP systems. We're building a second one in Newtown with an SMM grant. And then into the future, we have smaller towns like Kent and Bridgewater and Roxbury. They're very small communities. They do not have the public works capacity to be able to run an ASP system, but maybe an in-vessel system. So we are looking actually into the Green Mountain in-vessel systems as another tool and a resource for our municipalities to do on-site composting to manage residential food scraps. We need more public education and outreach, and we need support from the state. And we have 2 other pilots that will be coming soon, keeping my fingers crossed on more grant money. One is utilizing the Metro Store system. It's like sort of like the Big Belly, but it's a little bit different, and where residents can use an app to open up the container and have satellite locations so they don't have to rely on the days and operations of a transfer station to drop off their food scraps. So that addresses the question of what if we had it more centralized at the end of every street? Well, what if we had a few drop-off programs throughout town, or on your way to the grocery store, you can drop off your food scraps. The other pilot I'm working on, and I hope this isn't completely top secret, Dan, but I'm going to mention it. We're working on a pilot to incentivize residents where they get an award system using an app. I'm not going to tell you too much. I'm not even going to tell you the name of it yet. I'm working with Dan Martins, and we are going to work on an incentive program where residents basically build points every time they drop off their food scraps, and they're awarded with something locally, whether it's a gift card to Starbucks or Amazon or something. So that's the future, and thank you for your time, and I'll give it to Betsy.
Try to clip this thing on. Thanks so much, Jen, for teeing that up so well. This is definitely giving me hope for the future. My name is Betsy LaForce. I work with Green Mountain Technologies. Let me pull up my presentation here. Our company is based out of the Seattle area, but I actually live in South Carolina, and this is my first time to Connecticut. So thank you so much for having me to your beautiful state. And I'm so glad about this sunny weather, and thanks also for hanging in till the very end during such a beautiful day here. It's been a great afternoon, and I have learned a lot so far from many of you. Let's see if I can get this into presentation mode down here. Boom. Oh, I have to enable the content maybe. Here we go. Oh, over here. Okay, here we go. We're going to enable the external content. Thank you. Okay. So we've heard a lot today, and I just want to, I love being able to go last because I get to kind of tie it all in together. So some of the things I've heard that have stuck with me from the group and the presenters, landfill space is an issue. This is a conservation issue. Many of us are environmentalists, we're conservationists. That's why we're doing what we're doing here together, talking about composting. I've heard we need more compost facilities. Tipping fees are really high. My jaw dropped seeing the tip fees here. This unsurprising why we're sending a lot of the waste from Connecticut to other states. I didn't see South Carolina on that map, but in my home state, I know we actually put in a legislative ban a few years ago, and the campaign around it was called Don't Dump on South Carolina. So we probably don't want to be polluting other states anyway. 135,000 tons a year in municipal solid waste. Much of that can be composted. Transportation is tough. We don't have enough money to build out the infrastructure we need. Soil is important. Siting is difficult. We have a vibrant farming community. Technology is on the rise, hybrid systems, drop sites, pay as you throw. So again, pat on the back to all the great work y'all are doing in Connecticut, definitely paving the way for lots of composting progress to come. A little bit about my background. I come from the nonprofit environmental advocacy world for the last 6 years, working on land use policy and advocacy. Composting was a small part of that. Now I get to focus on it full time with Green Mountain, and part of the reason I was so attracted to this organization is because the last 6 years I've spent talking about challenges, fighting for solutions, and the solutions that Green Mountain's able to bring to the table to the composting realm really inspire a lot of hope. So this image is from one of our community composting projects in New Zealand. It's probably our most beautiful in-vessel composter with the background there of the mountains. And we've heard about some different technologies today, so I'm gonna hone in a little bit more on in-vessel technology, and just by a show of hands, who is familiar with in-vessel composting? Okay, so most of you. And there's a lot of different ways to go about it, so let's dive in. A little bit more about GMT. Who's heard of Green Mountain Technologies? Just curious. Okay, very cool. The company's been around since 1992. Our founder does have roots in Vermont. Many of you have asked me, are you guys in Vermont, Green Mountain? Based outside of the Seattle area. And we've designed hundreds of commercial facilities of all shapes and sizes all around the world, predominantly in the United States. And our mission, just like many of you, trying to help forward-thinking organizations reduce their environmental footprint, save money, and produce high-quality compost. So we're trying to make composting happen, make it cool, accessible, and affordable. So our main products and offerings, again, the large-scale, municipal scale, big aerated static pile facilities, turned aerated piles, biosolids treatments, but also the in-vessel, small scale. So for today, thinking about advanced solutions for municipalities, for universities, institutions, garden centers, this on-site processing really addresses a lot of the challenges that we've heard, and also some of the goals, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing transportation and hauling, decentralizing our reliance on this still limited, larger scale commercial infrastructure that's such an important piece of the puzzle, but there's a lot of other cogs in the wheel that we need to be also thinking about and bringing access to the more rural areas that maybe are farther away from the limited infrastructure. So a little bit about in-vessel technology. There are some advantages over some of the other technologies that we've heard about. Again, of course, depending on where you are and what it is you want to do. So with something like the earth flow, this is a pretty highly automated process. It still requires a human operator, hopefully with an understanding of composting. You don't have to be an absolute expert, but as we've heard from Jen and others, there's the still main components. This is the natural hot aerobic composting process. So we're producing high quality finished compost in this vessel. So we need to be familiar with the carbon to nitrogen ratio. We need a source of carbon, right? So a lot of times that's wood chips, leaves, something that's gonna add porosity to the mix. And we need moisture. So the key components of this system, which is retrofitted from a recycled shipping container, is the positive aeration, forced air coming up through the floor of this welded stainless steel lined system. So this is a great solution also for extreme cold environments, keep the hot composting process going through the winter time. And then you can see towards the back of the vessel is the mixing system. So that is an auger mounted on a cable car and gantry. So overnight, the system runs automatically back and forth and side to side, kind of sweeping, making different patterns and touching all four corners and moving all of that feedstock material around to make it nice and blended, homogenized, and also, of course, aerated. So we're avoiding that anaerobic decomposition that we've been talking so much about. So this scale, about 100 to 400 tons per year, depending on feedstocks, depending on retention times. There's a lot of creative ways to increase capacity and throughput through some of these hybrid kind of approaches that we'll talk a little bit about. Some of the key features and benefits that people ask me a lot about, the operating method. So with in-vessel composting, there's two kind of main ways to operate. You can do batch composting, where you're kind of stockpiling the feedstocks and the material in a place for a certain amount of time and loading the entire vessel all at one time, letting it cook, and then taking all the material out at one time and rinse and repeat. The earth flow is designed to operate on a continuous flow. So it makes it a little easier operationally, reducing labor time, reducing labor cost, reducing backaches, where you can put material in multiple times a day, all throughout the day, however often it might be coming in to where you're collecting it. And we have also an attachment that you can add to the load end of the vessel, which is a hydraulic tote tipper. So if you are using wheelie bins and toters to collect the material, you can push those bins right up to the machine and have it do the heavy lifting for you. So it's automated mixing and aeration, automated moisture addition if you need to add moisture. Food scraps, if that's your primary feedstock, typically already pretty moist, so don't often need to add a lot of moisture there, but that is built into the system if needed. So this is controlling temperatures and odors, and we've heard a lot, right, understandable concerns from our permitting agencies and regulatory agencies around groundwater, runoff, leachate, vectors, critters, smells. We want to be good neighbors. We don't want to continue to proliferate the bad rap that composting has garnered over the past several decades. So with something like an in-vessel system, it really, and to use a quote from an EPA regulator in Ohio, he said, this is a regulator's dream, because it's really addressing a lot of those concerns about the smell, about the runoff. This is a totally enclosed and contained system that can handle pretty high capacity. So super small footprint. Land is problematic, it's expensive. So the public-private partnership opportunities to work with municipalities that already have and are using city or county land, you don't need much more than a quarter acre or less. You know, this vessel is 10 feet by 20 feet. And then to have room for maneuverability, if you have a skid steer, if you want to store some bulking agent, store the finished compost to let it cure, maybe you're selling that product. You can really do a lot on a small footprint with something like an in-vessel. This can be connected to the grid in terms of power or solar operated. It's a pretty low electrical draw, about 20 kilowatt hours per day. So we do have some clients that have opted for solar. But the control panels are what run the motors that require the electricity, and those just run about 4 hours per day. So it's not a 24/7 motor or anything like that. So the bottom diagram, you can just see kind of how it works to load the feedstocks into the vessel. And then the retention time that we recommend for food scraps is about 3 weeks in the vessel. If you're doing like horse manure and bedding, for example, or different less putrescible feedstocks, you don't need to keep them in quite that long. 2 weeks is probably fine for a manure and bedding mix. But for food scraps, we recommend 3 weeks in the vessel. And that traveling auger is mixing and spinning and kind of pulling the material slowly from one end to the other end, kind of like an earthworm would move through a compost pile. And so over the course of the 3 weeks, as the auger's moving back and forth, you can really see the whole process, which is one of my favorite things about this system, the earth flow. You can see the whole process happening. Some other in-vessels I've seen, it's kind of like the black box effect, where you put the material in, maybe in a batch method, you can't see what's happening. If there's something going wrong, you don't know until the end of the batch, and then you might have to do it all over again. So with this system, you can pretty quickly see and be able to make those adjustments in real time. Like, it looks a little too dry, it looks a little too wet. And see, okay, the banana peel, I don't see that anymore. It's been 5 days, it's composting well. So to be able to make those adjustments is really helpful. And then after the 3 weeks, we do recommend curing, allowing that hot compost to cool off and mature, especially if you're going to be selling the product, which many of our clients do. With the vibrant agricultural community here, it seems like there should be a good market, and with residential landscaping, it really makes a great finished product. So a little case study, not too far away, Rutgers University got one of our earth-flow in-vessel systems in 2023. So they were looking to increase sustainability on campus. They have an agricultural program. They, of course, have food waste from their cafeteria. So they wanted a way to kind of blend those waste materials, those feedstocks, into a valuable finished product. So this solution addresses a lot of their sustainability goals on campus. It's in alignment with their climate action plan. It's now serving as a living laboratory that students and interns are able to interact with. They're doing studies about organics, recycling, and reuse. And this was partially grant funded by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. There was a collaboration with the New Jersey Composting Council. So a lot of creative partnership and funding opportunities out there available to make projects like this help them get off the ground. So Green Mountain, we helped with consultation, site selection, of course, sizing the vessel. One of the services we also help with is recipe planning. So especially for, let's say, a municipality, transfer station, maybe a hauler that's interested in starting to process, do some of the compost processing, but don't have a compost operator training certificate. We can help, especially in that first year. You know, it takes a while for this to become second nature, but after the first year of getting that carbon to nitrogen ratio really dialed in and understanding what the finished product looks like and how moist we want it to be, it's kind of smooth sailing from there. But especially in the first year, we do unlimited training and support to make sure that there's a successful composting program. And we also come on site to do the commissioning and training. We do an operator's training and a maintenance training to help answer a lot of those questions. So Rutgers, they got the tote tipper. Also, the biofilter is kind of the key feature for odor mitigation. We've heard talk of other types of biofiltration, so same kind of idea here. This is a pipe-on grade next to the vessel. Kind of looks like a raised wooden garden bed filled with the biomedia, which is thick wood chips that are wet, about 3 feet deep. And that only needs to be replaced every couple of years, and you can put that material into the vessel to use as your carbon bulking agent when it is time to replace those wood chips. So this is just a 30-second video that kind of shows the Rutgers vessel in action. If I can get the mouse back over, here we go.
The EarthFlow automatic composter at Rutgers University turns campus food waste into ready-to-cure compost in less than a month. Food waste is transported with an electric cart and loaded into the EarthFlow. The EarthFlow automatically mixes and grinds the material to accelerate the natural composting process, while the aeration system contains and eliminates odors. Learn more at compostingtechnology.com. The EarthFlow
Okay. Compostingtechnology.com, by the way, is our website. We just did a big website update. We're really proud of it. Check it out. Lots of great resources on there. Also wanted to show Lafayette College in Easton, Pennsylvania. Do we have some alumni in the house? Okay. I took this picture just a couple months ago. I was up in Bethlehem for a circularity conference, and I just loved this picture of the EarthFlow in the snow. It was Snowstorm Heather, I think was the name of it. Again, I'm from South Carolina. I was like, what's going on here? How do we do this? But we got to open up the EarthFlow. It was hot and steamy, still nice in that thermophilic hot composting range. So that was really cool to see firsthand. Lafayette's doing more of a student-run initiative with their sustainability program. It's really cool, full circle, farm to table, table to farm. They have their campus farm. It's called La Farm. So they take food scraps from their cafeteria, collect it in these buckets, and the student leaders that are actually paid to do this work, so they're paid interns, load the vessel by hand. And so they opted for that over a tote tipper. So they're able to kind of control and understand how many, a little of the 5-gallon buckets are going in. And then up top is a really nice electric vehicle. I think that's nicer than my car in terms of what I understood for the grant and the overall. That will last probably forever, that little electric cart. But they're able to drive around the campus, and then the finished compost that they produce in the earth flow goes to supplement La Farm. They're growing vegetables on La Farm and then donating that produce to adjacent communities in need that are hungry. So it's a really beautiful model. And again, just to kind of highlight the total circularity of on-site processing, you're reducing long-distance hauling, in many cases eliminating hauling altogether, and keeping those valuable resources in the community where they're being generated so that they can then go back to, as we've heard, nourish the soils, build the soils so our soils can store and sequester carbon, mitigate drought. Down in the low country where I live, it mitigates flooding, so the water doesn't just run right off the soil when it rains, causing flooding everywhere, but it can really absorb the water. So many reasons to compost our food scraps when we can. Anaerobic digestion, of course, is a really important, again, piece of the bigger picture. But if there's an opportunity to manage waste on site in these smaller scale ways, like the country of Austria, do you guys know how many compost facilities are in Austria, which is the size of the state of New Jersey? Just take a guess. Oh, Andrew knows. 400 composting facilities in Austria. Small scale, decentralized, on farm, run by farmers. It's possible. We've gotten kind of far away from it here in the US, but I think we're getting back on track thanks to your help. So a few other community spotlights. Full Circle Farms in Waimanalo, Hawaii. They got the first permitted in-vessel composting system in Hawaii. Hawaii burns their food waste. They are an island, far away from infrastructure. It's challenging. On-site composting, great way to go. We know 40% of, on average, what's in the waste profile, according to the EPA, municipal solid waste could be composted. So that's a great low-hanging fruit solution, as we heard Dr. Brown saying. Food banks are another great place to do on-site composting. The Kids Food Basket in Michigan and the Dayton Food Bank in Ohio, both not in addition to donating canned food to hungry residents in the community, they're growing produce, fresh local produce that they're donating with the donation bags, along with the canned produce that's donated. And then a lot of the food waste that they're bringing in, or food that they're bringing in to donate, is unsaleable. They're able to compost it on site. That's now a community drop site location, collection location, these food banks, and they're using that material, the wasted food, to grow more food to feed hungry people. So I think that's such a beautiful and powerful model. And then the Glenorchy project in New Zealand, again, public-private partnership, municipality partnered with an eco resort, a high-end resort, to bring together to have enough waste to kind of run an earth flow. I mean, run is the wrong term, but the scale for the earth flow, the small 20-foot system, it can handle about 500 pounds per day of food waste. And so when we're thinking about the carbon to nitrogen ratio, you want to add roughly the same amount of carbon. So let's call it 1,000 pounds a day of total feedstocks. And then the 40-foot unit is basically double that capacity, but it's not double the price. And then up from there, when we're thinking about hybrid approaches, bringing different technologies together, ASP technology in the in-vessel, we have a site-built earth flow. It's called site-built because a lot of the components are built locally, so it's a cool way to engage and stimulate the local economy, build the roof structure, the walls. Green Mountain provides the mixing technology, the aeration, and we could design multiple bays to have an active composting bay, aeration-only bays, curing bays. So by adding length, adding bays, you can really get up to 5,000 tons per year or more in this still really small footprint, kind of small to mid-scale composting size. This is probably hard to read. This is all on our website, but just some specifications. If y'all are interested, go to our website, compostingtechnology.com. You can see all of the power requirements, the footprint, the volume, the capacity for the different retention times, 21 days for food scraps, less for other feedstocks, lower retention time if you are doing forced aeration as an accessory processing style in the vessel or outside of the vessel. It's a good way to increase capacity. And then some free resources on our website. We have a compost calculator. If you're curious about feedstock blends, you have green waste, food scraps, horse manure, whatever it might be, you can go onto our calculator, put in the different feedstocks you have, roughly how much, and as long as the dials are in the green, you're in a good composting recipe. So lastly, next steps, call to action. Let's decentralize the composting infrastructure. These are easy to deploy. It's a 3 to 4 month lead time. These are built in America and Ohio. Recycled shipping containers, recycled steel. We're giving 10% of our profits as a company back to community composters. That's going to come in the form of donating an earth flow every year to the Community Compost Alliance through the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. So would love to talk with you about financing, partnership, any questions that you might have. Feel free to reach out. This is my contact info. Thank you so much.